The shuttle touched down with a soft hiss, and Lieutenant Commander felt the familiar sensation of gravity releasing its hold on her body. After 3 weeks of travel at Earth-standard gravity, the sudden lightness made her feel like she might float away. But she didn't move. Not yet. She sat in her seat and let her body adjust, breathing slowly, remembering her training. The shuttle door opened, and light poured in from Station 9. Through the window, she could see the massive trade hub stretching out before her. It was beautiful in a cold, efficient way. Metal and glass in carefully controlled environments. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds walked through its corridors every day, making deals that shaped the economy of the entire galaxy. And now Earth wanted a seat at that table. Stood up slowly. The gravity here was only 0.4 g, less than half of what she had grown up with. Her muscles, trained for Earth's crushing pull, suddenly had far less work to do. It would be easy to move too fast, to push off too hard, to look clumsy and foolish in front of the alien delegates waiting outside. She had seen the videos. Humans on their first trips to low-gravity stations, bouncing and stumbling like children learning to walk. The galaxy found it amusing. They called humans gravity prisoners and laughed at how awkward they became when freed from their heavy world. Had no intention of giving them that satisfaction. She walked down the shuttle ramp with measured steps. Each foot placement was deliberate. Each movement was controlled. She kept her center of gravity low and her motion smooth. To anyone watching, she looked like she had lived in low gravity her entire life. A small group waited at the bottom of the ramp. There was a station official, a short creature with gray skin and large eyes, holding a tablet. Beside the official stood 2 security guards in matching uniforms, and behind them, watching with obvious interest, were 3 tall, thin beings with pale blue skin and limbs that seemed too long for their bodies. Recognized them immediately. Everyone knew about the. They came from a world with barely 0.2 g, and they had evolved to be graceful and agile in low gravity. They dominated galactic trade, not through military power or advanced technology, but through centuries of political skill and economic manipulation. They had been attending summits like this one since before humans learned to split the atom. The station official stepped forward. "Lieutenant Commander, welcome to 9. I am Administrator. I will be assisting you during your stay." "Thank you," Administrator said. She kept her voice calm and professional. "Earth is honored to participate in this summit." Administrator made a gesture that might have been a smile. "Your quarters have been prepared. The opening reception begins in 4 hours. Do you require anything?" "No, thank you. I will rest and prepare." They had not stopped watching her. The tallest one, wearing elaborate robes that marked him as someone important, tilted his head slightly. His eyes were large and dark, and they studied her like she was a specimen in a laboratory. "So this is Earth's representative," he said. His voice was smooth and musical, but there was something beneath it, something condescending. "I am Ambassador of the Trade Confederation. I look forward to seeing how your young species handles galactic commerce." Young species noted the insult hidden in polite words. To the humans were newcomers, children who had barely left their home system. They had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Humans had only managed it for a little over a century. "I am honored to meet you," Ambassador said. She did not bow or show any sign of being intimidated. "Earth looks forward to productive negotiations." His thin lips curved slightly. "I'm sure you do." He turned to his companions and said something in his own language. They made sounds that might have been laughter. Pretended not to notice. Administrator led her away from the landing bay and through the station's wide corridors. The ceiling was high, designed to accommodate the many different body types that visited 9. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved past them. Some walked on 2 legs like. Others had 4 or 6 or more. Some floated. Some crawled. The galaxy was full of strange and wonderful life, and much of it had come here to trade. Your quarters are in the diplomatic wing, explained. They have been adjusted to Earth-standard atmosphere. However, the gravity throughout the station remains at zero point 4 G. I hope this will not cause you difficulty. It will not, said. Glanced at her with what might have been surprise. Most humans struggle with the adjustment. We have medical staff available if you experience any discomfort. That won't be necessary. They reached her quarters and left her with instructions on how to reach the reception hall, stepped inside, and finally allowed herself to relax. The room was simple but comfortable. A bed, a desk, a small bathroom. The walls were a neutral gray, and a large window looked out into the station's central atrium. She could see hundreds of beings moving below, going about their business. Sat down on the bed and closed her eyes. 15 years. That's how long she had trained for this. First as a pilot in Earth's military, learning to fight in every gravity condition from crushing planetary surfaces to the zero-G of deep space. Then as a diplomat, studying alien cultures and languages and trade law. And finally, as Earth's chosen representative for this summit. She knew what the galaxy thought of humans. Heavy, slow, bound to their crushing world. Unable to compete with species who had evolved in lighter gravity, who could move with grace and speed that humans could only dream of. They didn't understand. Earth's gravity wasn't a prison, it was a forge. Every step a human took on there required more strength than most species could imagine. Every breath filled lungs that had learned to pull oxygen from a thick atmosphere. Every bone, every muscle, every tendon had been built to withstand a weight that would crush a flat. When humans left their world, they didn't become weak. They became something else entirely. But the galaxy didn't know that yet. They saw only what they expected to see, clumsy gravity prisoners stumbling in unfamiliar environments. They didn't see the years of training that taught humans to control their strength. They didn't see the careful discipline that turned raw power into precision. That was about to change. Spent the next few hours reviewing her notes and preparing for the reception. She dressed in the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, a dark blue jacket with silver trim, practical pants, and boots with magnetic soles that would help her maintain stability if needed. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw exactly what she wanted the galaxy to see: calm, professional, and completely in control. The reception hall was enormous. Had seen pictures, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The ceiling was so high it was almost invisible, lost in soft lighting that changed colors slowly as time passed. Tables floated at various heights, accommodating species who preferred to stand, sit, or hover. Music played from hidden speakers, a strange blend of sounds from dozens of different worlds. Hundreds of delegates filled the space. Recognized some of them from her briefings. The massive creatures covered in thick armor-like skin. The small and quick, moving in tight groups. They who communicated through patterns of light on their bodies. And everywhere the tall and elegant and watching everything. Found her assigned place, a small section reserved for Earth's delegation. She was the only human here. Earth had not been important enough to send a full team. Not yet. She stood quietly observing the room, watching how the different species interacted. They moved through the crowd like dancers, stopping to speak with one group, then gliding smoothly to the next. They made it look effortless. Every gesture, every word, every smile was perfectly calculated. Ambassador noticed her watching. He said something to his companions and they all looked in her direction. Then, with obvious purpose, he walked toward her. "Lieutenant Commander," he said, "I hope you are enjoying our little gathering." "It's impressive," admitted. "Earth has nothing like this." "No, I imagine not." Stone made it clear this was not a compliment. "Your world is young, primitive, some might say, but do not be discouraged. Every species must start somewhere." Felt a spark of anger, but kept it hidden. "We appreciate the opportunity to learn from more experienced peoples." Smiled thin and cold. How diplomatic, But tell me, Lieutenant Commander, are you not uncomfortable? This gravity must feel very strange to someone from your heavy little world." Before could answer, suddenly pushed off from the floor and rose gracefully into the air. He spun once, twice, his long robes flowing around him like water. Then he landed without a sound, perfectly balanced. Several nearby delegates applauded. "They are known for our agility," said. "Low gravity is our natural environment. We evolved among the clouds of our world, dancing on winds that would carry your species away like leaves." He gestured at the space around them. "Please, show us what Earth's children can do." Knew what he wanted. He wanted her to try and fail. He wanted to watch her stumble and bounce and look foolish. He wanted everyone to see that humans didn't belong here. She met his dark eyes and smiled politely. "I'm afraid I'm not much of a dancer, Ambassador. Perhaps another time." Smile widened. He turned to his companions and spoke in his own language again. This time, the laughter was louder. "Of course," he said, "another time." He drifted away and stood alone, surrounded by beings who thought she was nothing but a clumsy prisoner of gravity. She let them think it. For now. The next 3 days passed in a blur of meetings and negotiations. Quickly learned that the summit was not really about trade. It was about power. They had dominated galactic commerce for so long that they thought of it as their natural right. Other species accepted their leadership because it was easier than fighting, and humans were simply not important enough to challenge anything. They made sure everyone remembered that. In every meeting, found ways to remind the other delegates that Earth was young and inexperienced. He praised human enthusiasm in a way that made it sound like a weakness. He asked simple questions about galactic trade law, then smiled patiently when she answered correctly, as if surprised that she could read. Other delegates followed his lead. They ignored her completely. They talked over her in meetings. The lights flickered in patterns that her translator said meant insignificant. But did not complain. She did not argue. She took notes and asked questions and learned everything she could about how the summit worked. She watched which species supported thee and which ones resented them. She noted which delegates seemed dissatisfied with the current trade agreements and which ones benefited from them. Earth had sent her here to learn, and she was learning a great deal. On the 4th day, proposed new trade terms. Sat in the main conference chamber, surrounded by delegates from 40 different worlds, and listened as the ambassador laid out his plan. The terms were complicated, full of legal language and economic formulas, but the result was simple. Earth would be effectively excluded from every major resource market in the sector. "These terms are fair," said, his voice smooth and reasonable. "They protect established trade relationships while allowing new species to participate in appropriate ways." Looked at the document in front of her. The appropriate ways meant scraps, leftover contracts that no one else wanted. Earth would be allowed to trade, but only for goods that didn't matter. She raised her hand. "Ambassador, I have some concerns about these terms." The room went quiet. Delegates turned to look at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to annoyance. Tilted his head. "Of course, Lieutenant Commander, please share your concerns." Section 14 restricts access to rare mineral markets based on established presence. Earth has no established presence because we've only recently begun interstellar trade. This effectively locks us out permanently. A reasonable protection for species who have invested centuries in developing these markets, said. "Surely, you don't expect to receive the same benefits as those who have worked so hard for so long." "I expect fair terms," said. "These terms aren't fair. They're designed to keep new species from ever becoming competitive." The silence stretched. Several delegates exchanged glances. A few of them noticed, seemed interested in what she was saying. Smile didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Your species is very direct, perhaps too direct. Galactic trade requires patience and understanding. Perhaps in a few centuries, when Earth has matured, we can discuss more favorable terms." "A few centuries is a long time," said. "Not for us," turned back to the other delegates. "Shall we proceed with the vote?" The vote was fast. Earth stood alone, the terms passed. Gathered her documents and prepared to leave. She had known this would happen. Earth had no allies here, no leverage, no power. She was one person against centuries of established relationships. But she had planted a seed. Some delegates had looked uncomfortable during the vote. Some had hesitated before raising their hands. This control was strong, but it wasn't absolute. She just needed time and an opportunity. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. The conference chamber emptied slowly, delegates drifting away in small groups to discuss the vote's results. Took her time, organizing her notes, waiting for the room to clear. She wanted to think. A shadow fell across her table. She looked up to find standing over her his two companions flanking him. The ambassador's smile was gone. His dark eyes were cold. "You speak very boldly for a representative of such a minor species," he said quietly. "Perhaps you don't understand how things work here." "I understand perfectly," said. "You've made it very clear." "Have I?" Leaned closer. "Let me make it clearer. Earth is nothing. Your species crawled out of your gravity barely a century ago. You have no history, no culture, no allies. The only reason you're here at all is because the regulations require us to at least pretend that new species have a voice." Stood up slowly. Even in 0.4G she was shorter than. His long body seemed to tower over her, but she didn't step back. "Thank you for explaining," she said evenly. His eyes narrowed. "You should go home, Lieutenant Commander. Tell your leaders that Earth's place is on Earth. Leave galactic trade to those who understand it." He turned and walked away, his companions following. Their movement was graceful, almost floating, like dancers leaving a stage. "Watch them go." Then she walked in the opposite direction, toward her quarters. The corridors were quiet now, most delegates still in the conference area. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. She was halfway to her room when she heard the alarm. It started as a low tone, then rose to an urgent wail. Emergency lights flashed along the walls. A mechanical voice announced something in a language didn't understand. She stopped and looked around. Other beings were emerging from doors and corridors, confused and frightened. The alarm continued screaming. Then she heard the rumble. It came from somewhere above, a deep grinding sound that made the floor vibrate. Looked up and saw nothing but the high ceiling and its soft lights, but the sound was growing louder. Someone screamed. Turned toward the sound and saw it. A massive cargo container, easily twice her height, was sliding down an emergency ramp that had opened in the wall. Something had gone wrong with the station's cargo system. The container was moving fast, picking up speed as it descended. And directly in its path was a group of delegates. They were small and quick, but they had been caught by surprise. They scattered in different directions, their tiny legs struggling to find purchase on the smooth floor. Most of them escaped, but 3 were trapped against a wall with nowhere to go. The container was 10 meters away, then 5. Didn't think. She moved. Her legs pushed off the floor with all the strength that Earth had built into them. In 0.4G, that strength became something else entirely. She crossed the distance in 2 bounds, placing herself between the container and the. The container hit her like a wall, but had braced herself. Her feet were planted wide, her knees bent, her center of gravity low. She caught the container's edge with both hands and pushed. Metal screamed. Her boots scraped against the deck plating, leaving deep gouges in the surface. The container's momentum tried to crush her, tried to drive her backward into the wall and the small beings behind her, but didn't move. She held. The container shuddered, groaned, and finally stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. The alarm continued wailing. The emergency lights continued flashing, and stood there, hands pressed against cold metal, holding back a weight that should have killed her. Then she stepped aside and let the container tip slowly onto its side. It crashed to the floor with a sound like thunder. Turned around. The three were staring at her with wide eyes. Behind them, more beings had gathered to watch. Other species she didn't recognize, and in the back, still and silent, the ambassador's face was impossible to read. Looked down at her hands. They were red and raw, the skin scraped from the metal's rough surface. Her arms ached. Her legs trembled slightly from the effort. But she was standing. One of them stepped forward. Its translator produced a high, wavering voice. You saved us, you stopped it. Nodded slowly. Are you hurt? No, we are well. The looked at the container, then back at, how did you do that? Everyone was waiting for the answer. The entire corridor had gone silent except for the fatting alarm. Dozens of beings from dozens of worlds, all staring at the small human who had just stopped a runaway cargo container with her bare hands. Straightened her uniform. Her voice was calm. I'm from Earth, she said. We're used to carrying heavy things. She walked away without looking back, but she could feel their eyes on her all the way to her quarters, and for the first time since arriving at Station 9, she smiled. The next morning, everything was different. Walked to the conference chamber and felt the change immediately. Beings who had ignored her before now stopped to stare. Conversations fell silent as she passed. Some delegates stepped aside to let her through, their eyes following her with expressions she couldn't quite identify. Fear, respect, she wasn't sure. The delegation sought her out before the session began. Their leader, a being whose translator identified as Trade Master, approached her with obvious nervousness. Lieutenant Commander said, "We wish to thank you again for your actions yesterday. Our people owe you a great debt." "No debt is necessary," said. "I'm glad I could help. Nevertheless, we remember those who help us." Small eyes darted around the room, then back to, if Earth wishes to discuss trade arrangements outside of the main summit, they would be willing to listen. Kept her expression neutral, but inside something sparked. "I appreciate that, Trade Master. Perhaps we can arrange a meeting." Nodded quickly and away. Other delegates approached her throughout the morning. A warrior who had witnessed the incident wanted to know more about human strength. A scientist asked questions about Earth's gravity and its effects on biological development. Even representatives from species had never heard of came to introduce themselves. The noticed ambassador watched from across the room, surrounded by his usual companions. His face remained composed but could see the tension in his long limbs. Yesterday she had been nothing. Today she was suddenly interesting. He didn't like it. When the session began, made his move. "Before we proceed with today's agenda," he said, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation, "I believe we should address yesterday's incident." The room went quiet. "It appears that our human guest performed an impressive physical feat," continued. "Stopping that container was certainly dramatic, but I wonder if it was entirely appropriate." Felt dozens of eyes turn toward her. "The cargo systems on this station are carefully maintained," said. "Malfunctions are extremely rare, and yet, just when our human friend needed an opportunity to demonstrate her species' capabilities, one occurred." He spread his long hands. "I'm not making accusations, of course, but I think we all deserve an explanation." The implication was clear. He was suggesting that had somehow arranged the incident. She stood up. The room went even quieter. "Ambassador raises a fair point," she said. Her voice was calm. "The timing was convenient, perhaps too convenient." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of various delegates. "I can only tell you that I had nothing to do with the malfunction. Station security is welcome to investigate. I have nothing to hide." "Of course you would say that," said smoothly. "Yes, I would, because it's true," paused. "But let me ask you something, Ambassador. Why does it matter?" Tilted his head. "I'm not sure I understand." Whether the malfunction was an accident or not, the result was the same. 3 delegates were in danger. I stopped the container. That happened. She gestured at her own body. "You've seen what humans can do now. You can't unsee it." The room stirred. Several delegates exchanged glances. "Your species has called us gravity prisoners for decades," continued. "You've laughed at how clumsy we are in low gravity. You've assumed we're weak because we come from a heavy world." She shook her head. "You had it backward. We're not weak. We're compressed. All that strength you see in Earth life, the muscle and bone and determination, it's still there. It doesn't disappear when we leave our planet." She looked directly at. "We carry it with us." The silence stretched. Then, from somewhere in the room, made a low rumbling sound that's translator identified as approval. Other sounds followed. Not applause exactly, but something like it. Acknowledgement, recognition. His expression didn't change, but saw his long fingers tighten slightly. "Very inspiring," he said. "But pretty words don't change economic reality. Earth remains a minor player in galactic trade. One act of strength doesn't alter centuries of established relationships." "No," agreed. "It doesn't, but it's a start." She sat down. The session continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Delegates who had dismissed her before now listened when she spoke. Questions that had been ignored were suddenly considered. The still controlled the room, but their control felt less absolute. During a break, approached her again. This time he came alone. "You're clever," he said quietly. "More clever than I expected." "Thank you, Ambassador." It wasn't a compliment. His dark eyes studied her face. "You're making enemies, powerful enemies. Is that wise for someone in your position?" Met his gaze steadily. "I'm not trying to make enemies. I'm trying to earn respect for my species. Respect is earned over centuries, not days." "Then we'd better get started." Was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. It was a cold sound without warmth, but it was genuine. "I see," he said. "You really believe you can change things. How, human?" "Is that an insult?" "Not entirely." Turned to leave, then paused. "A word of advice, Lieutenant Commander. They have dominated galactic trade for 3,000 years. We have survived challenges far greater than one strong human. Whatever you're planning, it won't work." "I'm not planning anything," said. "I'm just representing my people." Smiled his thin smile. "Of course you are." He walked away and watched him go. He was right about one thing. She was making enemies. They wouldn't forgive her for embarrassing them, and they had the power to make Earth's participation in galactic trade very difficult. But she had also made friends. They owed her. They respected her. Other species were curious about humans in a way they hadn't been before. It wasn't much, but it was more than Earth had possessed when she arrived. The next session began, and prepared for another round of negotiations. But before the ambassador could speak, one of his aides rushed into the room and whispered something in his ear. His expression changed. Just for a moment something flickered across his face. Surprise, concern. Then he composed himself and stood up. "Distinguished delegates," he said, "I have just received word of an unusual development. It seems that several delegations have requested a formal challenge to yesterday's trade terms, citing concerns about fair representation for new species." The room buzzed with conversation. "The challenge was proposed by the continued, and has been supported by the and several smaller delegations." Kept her face neutral, but inside she felt a surge of hope. "As such," said, "we will be postponing our current agenda to address these concerns. The Chamber will reconvene tomorrow to hear arguments from all parties." He looked directly at. I hope Earth's representative is prepared. Nodded, Earth is always prepared, Ambassador. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber, his robes flowing behind him. The other delegates began talking among themselves, their voices rising with speculation and excitement, but sat quietly thinking. Tomorrow would be important. Tomorrow would determine whether Earth had a real future in galactic trade, or whether they would crush this small rebellion before it could grow. She needed a plan, and she thought she might have one. That evening, met with Trade Master and several other delegates who had supported the challenge. They gathered in a small conference room away from the main halls, where they could speak freely. "They will fight hard tomorrow," said. "They don't like being challenged. They will use every political tool they possess to defeat us." "What tools do they have?" asked. "Many. They control most of the major trade routes. They have agreements with dozens of species that require support for positions. They can threaten economic retaliation against anyone who opposes them." Small bodies seem to shrink even further. Many delegations are afraid to speak against them openly. A named rumbled in agreement. "Fear keeps many silent, but anger grows beneath the silence. They have been too powerful for too long. Others remember when their own species were treated as Earth is treated now." "Then we need to give them a reason to speak," said. "What kind of reason?" asked. Thought carefully. She had studied culture during her training. She knew their history, their values, their traditions, and she knew about one tradition in particular. "Ambassador challenged me on my first day here," she said. "He showed off his agility and invited me to compete. I declined." His eyes widened. "You wish to accept the challenge now?" "Not exactly," leaned forward. "Tell me about the agility trials, the formal ones where disputes are settled through physical competition." The delegates exchanged glances. "You speak of the trials of grace," said a whose lights flickered with interest. "An ancient custom. When negotiations fail, either party can demand a trial. The winner's position is accepted by all." "Has anyone ever beaten in these trials?" Silence. "The trials take place in variable gravity chambers," said slowly. "The gravity shifts throughout the competition, low to high and back again, are masters of low gravity. No other species can match them there." "But what about high gravity?" asked. More silence, then spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "No one has ever demanded a trial that includes high gravity. Not true high gravity. Earth standard would. It would. It would crush them," finished. "Their bones are hollow. Their muscles are adapted for 0.2 G at 1 G. They can barely stand." The delegates stared at her. "You would do this?" asked. "You would challenge to a trial knowing that it might destroy him?" "I would challenge him to a fair trial," said. "One that tests all ranges of gravity, not just the range where his species has an advantage. If he accepts, it's his choice. If he refuses," she shrugged, "then everyone sees that they are afraid to compete on equal terms." His translator produced a sound that might have been laughter. "Equal terms. For 3,000 years they have defined what equal means, and now a human from a heavy little world wants to change that." "Yes," said simply, "I do." The room was quiet for a long moment, then stood up, his massive form filling the space. "My people respect strength," he said, "and we respect courage. Whatever happens tomorrow, they stand with Earth." One by one, the other delegates voiced their support. The species barely knew. They had their own reasons for opposing but tonight, those reasons aligned with hers. Tomorrow would change everything. Or it would change nothing. Either way was ready. The chamber was packed. Word had spread overnight about the challenge to the trade terms, and delegates from across the station had come to watch. Every seat was filled. Beings stood along the walls and crowded the doorways. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. Entered alone. She wore her formal uniform, cleaned and pressed, the silver trim catching the light. Her boots clicked against the floor with each measured step. Ambassador was already there, seated at the head of the chamber with his delegation around him. He watched her approach with those cold, dark eyes. "Lieutenant Commander," he said as she reached her place, "I see you've been busy." "Just doing my job, Ambassador." "Indeed," stood up and addressed the room. "Distinguished delegates, we are here to address concerns about the trade terms approved 3 days ago. Several delegations have requested reconsideration. Before we proceed with arguments, I wish to make a statement." The room fell silent. "These concerns are not new," said. "Every few decades, some species or another complains that the current system is unfair. They demand changes. They threaten to leave the trade alliance. And every time cooler heads prevail, the system continues because it works." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Earth's representative has stirred up old resentments with her dramatic actions and bold words. She has convinced some of you that change is possible, even necessary. But I ask you to consider, what would that change cost? Centuries of stable trade relationships, torn apart because one young species feels it deserves more than it has earned." Several delegates nodded. They had many supporters in this room. "However," continued, "they are not afraid of change. We have led this alliance for 3,000 years not through fear but through excellence. If Earth believes it can do better, let them prove it." He turned to face directly. "I propose we settle this matter through the traditional method, the trials of grace. Let Earth's representative demonstrate her species' capabilities in fair competition. If she wins, we will reconsider the trade terms. If she loses, this challenge ends and we proceed as planned." The room erupted in whispers. Had expected this. She had hoped for it, but hearing the words out loud still made her heart beat faster. "I accept," she said loudly, "but with one condition." Raised an eyebrow. "A condition?" "The trials of grace traditionally test agility in low gravity because that's where excel. I propose we modify the trial to include the full range of gravity environments. From 0.2 g to 1 g, a true test of adaptability." The whispers became shouts. Delegates argued among themselves. The delegation looked shocked. Held up his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "You're asking me to compete at Earth-standard gravity. You know that's impossible for my species." "I'm asking for a fair competition," said. "One that doesn't automatically favor either participant. You excel at low gravity. I excel at high gravity. A trial that tests both would be truly equal." "It would be suicide." "Then don't accept." The room went still. Stared at her. His long face was unreadable, but could see the calculation in his eyes. If he refused, he looked weak. If he accepted, he risked everything. "You think you've trapped me," he said softly. "Clever little human. I think I've offered you a fair challenge. What you do with it is your choice." Was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. "Very well," he said. "I accept your modified terms, but let us be clear about what's at stake. If you win, Earth gets favorable trade terms and a permanent seat at the Council. If I win, Earth is excluded from the alliance entirely. No trade, no participation, no voice. Your species goes back to your heavy little rock and stays there." Felt her stomach clench. This was higher stakes than she had planned, was betting everything, forcing her to do the same. She could refuse. She could insist on the original stakes, but then she would look afraid, and fear was something Earth couldn't afford. "Agreed," she said. The room exploded again. It took several minutes for order to be restored. When it was, Administrator stepped forward. "The trial will take place tomorrow morning in the station's variable gravity chamber. Both participants will be tested through the full range of gravity environments. From 0.2 g to 1 g, The trial will consist of 3 stages: mobility, precision, and endurance. The winner of 2 or more stages claims victory. Looked at both of them. Do you understand and accept these terms? Yes, said. Yes, said. Then may fortune favor you both. The chamber began to empty, delegates streaming toward the exits while discussing what they had just witnessed. Some approached to wish her luck or offer advice. Others avoided her entirely. Didn't leave immediately. He waited until most of the room had cleared, then walked toward her. You're brave, he said. I'll give you that, but bravery won't save you tomorrow. We'll see. Yes, thin lips curved. We will. He turned and walked away, his robes flowing behind him. His companions followed, and soon was alone in the empty chamber. She stood there for a long time, thinking about what she had done. Tomorrow she would either secure Earth's future or destroy it. There was no middle ground. The weight of an entire world pressed down on her shoulders, but was used to carrying heavy things. She left the chamber and began to prepare. The variable gravity chamber was a marvel of engineering. It was a massive sphere, 50 meters in diameter, with observation decks circling its equator. Inside, artificial gravity could be adjusted from near zero to well beyond Earth standard. It was used for testing equipment, training personnel, and apparently for settling ancient disputes between species. Stood in the entrance, looking at the curved walls that would determine her fate. The surface was smooth metal with handholds and platforms at regular intervals. Lights marked zones where different challenges would take place. Ambassador stood on the opposite side of the chamber. He had removed his elaborate robes and wore a simple suit that clung to his long limbs. Even now, he moved with grace, his body swaying slightly as if dancing to music only he could hear. The observation decks were packed. It seemed like the entire station had come to watch. Spotted Trade Master near the front, his small body pressed against the transparent barrier. Stood nearby, his massive arms crossed. Even beings she had never seen before were there, drawn by the spectacle of a human challenging the administrator's voice echoed through the chamber. The trial of grace will now begin. Stage 1. Mobility. Both participants will navigate through a course while gravity shifts from 0.2 g to 0.8 g. The first to complete the course wins this stage. A series of platforms illuminated across the chamber, marking the path they would need to follow. Take your positions. Move to the starting point. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. Across the chamber did the same. Begin. The gravity dropped immediately to 0.2 g, launched himself forward, his body soaring through the air with incredible grace. He bounced from platform to platform, barely touching each surface before pushing off again. It was beautiful to watch. Moved more carefully. At 0.2 g, her earth-trained muscles wanted to push too hard. She had to consciously hold back, controlling each movement to avoid overshooting her targets. She fell behind quickly. By the third platform was already halfway through the course. The audience cheered. Then the gravity shifted, 0.4 g, then 0.5 g. His movements became less graceful. He still led, but each jump required more effort. His landings were harder. 0.6 g. Began to catch up. Her body was adapting, finding its rhythm. This gravity was still light compared to Earth, but it was heavy enough that her training started to matter. 0.7 g. Stumbled on a landing. It was small, just a moment of imbalance, but saw it. She pushed harder, closing the gap. 0.8 g. Now was struggling. His long limbs, so elegant in low gravity, became awkward and unwieldy. Each step seemed to drain him. His breathing was visible even from a distance. Past him. She reached the final platform and touched the marker just as was still 3 platforms behind. He finished, but his face was twisted with effort. Stage 1, victory to Earth. The crowd erupted. Not all of them were cheering for her, but many were. Allowed herself a small smile. Met her eyes across the chamber. His expression promised revenge. Stage 2, Precision, announced. Participants will perform specific movements at designated gravity levels. Points are awarded for accuracy and control. Gravity will range from 0.3 g to 1 g. This stage was harder to follow. Both participants performed a series of movements at each gravity level, and judges scored their precision. At low gravity was clearly superior. His control was absolute, each gesture perfect. But as gravity increased, the balance shifted. At 0.7 g, they were nearly equal. At 0.9 g, could barely complete the required movements. At 1 g, Earth standard, he collapsed. The judges had to stop the stage while recovered. Medical staff checked him, then helped him stand. He waved them away, but his body was shaking. Stage 2, Victory to Earth. The chamber went wild. 2 stages to 0 had won. She had done it, but was walking toward her, his face pale but determined. The trial has 3 stages, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. We will complete all 3. Hesitated. Ambassador, you've already lost. The trial must be completed according to tradition, interrupted. The final stage is endurance. We will finish what we started. He looked at, unless Earth is afraid. Understood what he was doing. If she refused, it would look like she was denying him a fair chance. The victory would feel hollow. I'm not afraid, she said. Let's finish it. Stage 3, Endurance. Participants will remain standing as gravity increases from 0.1 g to maximum tolerance. The last one standing wins. It was simple, brutal, and potentially deadly. The gravity dropped to almost nothing. Both of them floated, anchored only by handholds. Then it began to rise. 0.2 g, 0.3 g, 0.4 g. Remained standing, though his jaw was clenched tight. 0.5 g, 0.6 g, 0.7 g. He dropped to one knee. His arms shook as he tried to push himself back up. 0.8 g, 0.9 g. He collapsed, his body pressed flat against the floor. His breathing was ragged, desperate. Stood over him. She felt the weight of the gravity pressing down on her too, but it was nothing. This was home. This was what she had been born into. Stop the trial, someone shouted from the observation deck. You're killing him. But raised one trembling hand. No, he gasped. Continue. The gravity reached 1 g Earth standard. Stood normally. Lay motionless, unable even to lift his head. For a long moment, nothing moved. The entire station seemed to hold its breath. Then did something unexpected. She knelt down beside and offered him her hand. It's over, she said quietly. You proved your courage, let me help you up. Stared at her hand. His dark eyes were filled with emotions she couldn't read, pride, anger, and something else, something that might have been respect. He took her hand, pulled him up, supporting his weight as the gravity slowly decreased back to station standard. His body was light in her arms, fragile in a way she hadn't expected. On Earth, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, we don't mock gravity, we carry it with us. But we also know when to help those who carry different burdens. She released him gently, making sure he was stable before stepping back. Stood on his own, swaying slightly. His face was unreadable. Then slowly, he bowed his head. Earth wins the trial, he said. The trade terms will be renegotiated. Earth will have its seat at the council. The chamber erupted in cheers and shouts. Delegates rushed down from the observation decks to congratulate, to ask questions, to be near the human who had changed everything. But's eyes remained on. The ambassador straightened his clothing, regaining some of his dignity. His companions rushed to support him, but he waved them away. He walked toward, each step slow and careful. You could have humiliated me, he said quietly. You could have let me lie there while everyone watched. Why didn't you? Considered the question. Because that's not what Earth is, she said. We're not here to dominate anyone. We just want a fair chance. You gave us that chance whether you meant to or not, and when it was over there was no reason to make you suffer more. Studied her for a long moment. You're different from what I expected, he finally said. All humans are, perhaps, he paused. I still don't like you, but I think I might respect you. That's a start. Almost smiled. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd with his delegation. Trade Master appeared at side, his small body bouncing with excitement. You did it, you actually did it. Earth will have favorable trade terms, a seat at the council. This is the beginning of a new era. Nodded, but she felt strangely calm. The excitement hadn't hit her yet. Maybe it never would. It's a beginning, she agreed. But there's a lot of work ahead. They won't forget this. Other species will test us. Earth has a long way to go before we're truly accepted. But today you showed them what humans can do, said. Today you showed them that Earth isn't just a heavy little rock. You're more than they ever imagined. Looked around the chamber at all the beings from all the different worlds and felt the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. Earth was counting on her. Humanity was counting on her. But she was used to carrying heavy things. Come on, she said too. We have negotiations to attend. As she walked out of the chamber, she felt the gravity of the station pressing down on her. 0.4 g less than half of what she had grown up with. But she carried Earth with her wherever she went. And now the galaxy knew it.